They're watching, always, not with loud suspicion but with silent precision. A glance here, a question there, all of it designed to measure you. They're waiting for a twitch, a hesitation, a spark of emotion they can dissect, because the second they understand you, they start shaping you. They'll know what offends you, what flatters you, what weakens you, and that's why Machiavelli didn't just suggest, he commanded one law above all: never let them read you. Because the moment they do, you're no longer a mystery, you're a map. And maps are meant to be followed, exploited, conquered. Your strength doesn't lie in being seen, it lies in becoming unreadable, a shadow in daylight, present, yet unreachable, visible, yet undecodable. This isn't just protection, it's power. Most people think transparency is strength. They think being real is noble. But what they call authenticity, Machiavelli called vulnerability. Because emotion isn't honesty, it's data. And every time you hand someone your emotions, you're handing them ammunition. A sigh becomes a signal, a flinch becomes a weakness, a smile becomes an invitation. That's why emotional stillness is lethal, not robotic, just uncapturable. You laugh, but only when it means nothing. You frown, but only when you've already won. You become unreadable not because you hide, but because you control every signal, like a poker player with nothing on the table but eyes that never blink. And that's when they panic, because power in silence creates noise in their minds. Now here's the second principle: break their assumptions with unpredictability. Most people are patterned. You insult them, they defend. You praise them, they glow. You ignore them, they chase. But the second you flip that script, you break their mental model. If they expect fear, give them calm. If they expect retreat, step forward. If they expect agreement, nod. And do the opposite, not to confuse, to control. Because the brain needs patterns, and when it can't find one in you, it stops trying. That's when you become untouchable. You don't need to be dramatic. You just need to be unreadable enough to keep them second-guessing. And second-guessing is where power lives. Third, control your narrative or they will invent one. People fear what they can't label. So when you're vague, when you're silent, they start filling in the blanks. They'll call you arrogant, mysterious, dangerous. Let them. Because when someone's guessing, they're already off balance. And a man who controls what others believe about him doesn't need to correct lies. He uses them. Speak less. Say only what plants an idea, not what explains it. Smile in chaos. Disappear without warning. Speak with weight, but never with desperation. Let them believe they know you, but make sure what they know is a mask you crafted. Now the fourth principle: don't be nice, be strategic. Niceness is the currency of the predictable. It's not strength, it's not virtue. It's often desperation disguised as charm, the quiet craving to be accepted. And Machiavelli saw it clearly. People who want to be liked are the first to be used, because kindness, when it's a default, becomes a pattern, and patterns are easy to manipulate. So you don't become cold and you become calculated. You help when it gives you leverage. You stay silent when your words could be ammunition. You offer warmth but never access. You're not rude, you're refined, not cruel, controlled. People may call you distant, but that distance is your shield, because respect doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being unreadable, mysterious, dangerous. You are the storm behind the stillness, the presence they can't predict and therefore can't challenge. Fifth, when you reveal nothing, you own everything. Every secret you keep, every intention you conceal, becomes a weapon in your arsenal. The less they know about your goals, your fears, your timing, the more they project their own. And projections are always flawed. That's how you win without effort. While they scramble to interpret your silence, you're already 10 steps ahead. Machiavelli didn't explain himself. He let others wonder. He didn't correct false assumptions, he used them. When someone misjudges you, don't clarify, don't explain, let them. Because when their illusion shatters, it stings harder. You didn't just mislead them, you let them mislead themselves. That is not deception, that is strategy. Now understand this. Blend in, but don't belong. You wear the culture like a disguise, the language, the customs, the tone. You nod in the right moments, laugh when expected, speak when invited. But underneath, you're not in the room. You're above it, observing, calculating. Fog, not ice. Present but untouchable. And because you seem familiar, they drop their guard. They trust the surface. And that's when your silence becomes most dangerous. Because while they share their thoughts freely, you collect data. While they speak emotions, you write psychological maps. You don't interrupt, you record, you don't react, you prepare. Now let's go deeper, into the most misunderstood form of power, weaponized ambiguity. The world is addicted to clarity. People want answers, labels, definitions. They want to know if you're a friend or threat, ally or rival, strong or weak. But the moment you give them clarity, you give them control. That's why ambiguity is a weapon. When someone asks you a pointed question, don't answer, redirect. When they demand your stance, give a universal truth. When they want commitment, create delay. It's not avoidance, it's psychological pressure. Because uncertainty eats at them. It forces them to imagine, to guess, to second guess. And while they're busy trying to define you, they can't move against you. They hesitate, they stall. And in that pause, you win. Machiavelli mastered this. He knew the mind that can't be boxed can't be attacked. If they can't understand your motives, they can't sabotage them. If they can't predict your direction, they can't block your path. And so you become a ghost in plain sight, seen but not known, heard but not understood. You don't deny access to connection. You deny access to control. There's a difference. Let them think they know enough. Let them feel familiar with your surface, but never, never let them into your core. Because once someone reaches your center, they find the code. And once they hold the code, they own the system. But there's more. Here's a brutal truth. Even unreadability can become predictable, so you disrupt it, strategically, occasionally, a calculated break in character. You vanish when they expect presence. You explode when they expect calm. You offer warmth, then withdraw. Not to confuse, but to reset their certainty. Because even mystery once understood becomes a map, and Machiavelli knew a pattern, even one built on silence, must be broken to remain feared. You don't need to become erratic. You just need to remind them you could. That potential for chaos is what keeps them cautious, and caution keeps you powerful. Now we sharpen the edge. Give them the wrong read in on purpose. Most people spend their lives correcting misunderstandings, trying to explain themselves, trying to prove who they really are. But Machiavelli would call that a waste of power, because when someone misjudges you, when they think you're weak, naive, emotional, that's not a threat. That's a gift. It's camouflage. Let them build a false version of you. Let them think you don't see the game, that you're just drifting harmless. Then, when it matters, flip the script. Act faster, speak colder, decide without hesitation. The reversal will shatter their expectations and their confidence with it. You didn't just win, you rewrote the rules while they were reading the wrong playbook. Because when you feed someone a false image, they'll walk right into the trap you designed for them, thinking it was their idea all along. And now we enter the realm of emotional economy. Most people spend emotions recklessly. They smile too often, they explain too much, they validate too quickly, they leak presence. You conserve. Every glance, every word, every pause is intentional. Not fake, just disciplined. You don't offer comfort to make others feel better. You don't share feelings to be relatable. You don't broadcast your dreams, because that's how people learn where to aim. When they ask what you want, you smile and say, nothing important. And in that moment, they feel both close to you and completely shut out. That tension, that's your fortress. You are not a puzzle to be solved. You are a mirror that reflects back what they want to see, and mirrors, real ones, never speak first. Now we enter the territory where power becomes invisible, and therefore indestructible. Never reveal your timeline. Ambition is only dangerous when it cannot be tracked. The moment people know what you're building, when you're launching or how close you are to your next breakthrough, they begin to interfere. They plant seeds of doubt. They position themselves in your path. They disguise sabotage as concern. But when they assume you're idle, that's when you're most dangerous. Machiavelli moved like a shadow behind curtains of normalcy. While others watched his words, he rewrote alliances, While they waited for him to act, he had already won. So you move in silence, you don't post progress, you don't announce plans. You let the results arrive like lightning. No warning, no build-up, just impact. Because the most powerful strikes are the ones they never prepare for. You weren't seen as rising. You were simply there, already in place, already inevitable. And here's a chilling rule. Never let anyone feel they've figured you out. The moment someone believes they know how you think, how you'll react, what matters to you, their guard drops. And that comfort gives them courage. So shatter that comfort. Occasionally do the opposite. Reverse your routines. Compliment someone you've always ignored. Support an idea you previously dismissed. Not randomly, but precisely. To inject doubt, to unbalance, to make them pause and think, wait, do I really know who they are? Because in that pause, their certainty fractures. And fractured certainty is fear in disguise. Machiavelli didn't want to be feared for chaos. He wanted to be feared for fluidity. Predictability invites betrayal, but when they don't know what you might do, they freeze. And frozen minds don't fight. They observe, they hesitate, and that's all the advantage you need. Now we reach the final stage of psychological domination, the illusion of closeness. Let people feel they know you. Give them just enough. Your favorite movie, a story from your past, a repeated phrase or routine. These are not truths. They are tokens, surface-level artifacts. What they see is the shell, but the engine, the core, the true center of your strategy stays sealed. Because the moment someone believes they have access to the real you, they search for pressure points. But when they reach in and find nothing, that confusion becomes a shield. They try to pull strings, but none are connected. They try to manipulate warmth, but it's not wired to need. And that's when they stop trying. Not because you pushed them away, but because they realize there's no room to enter. You are present, but impenetrable. Now go colder. Master the art of unfinished sentences. This is Machiavellian silence in motion. Speak but don't conclude. Start a thought and leave it hanging. Say, some people don't really understand what's going on, and trail off. Or, if I told you what I was working on, it might... Then stop. Why? Because the mind hates open loops. It rushes to fill them. And when they finish the sentence in their own heads, their imagination becomes your puppet. You didn't lie, you didn't hide, you simply withheld just enough to make them think, wonder, invent. And in that mental tension, you own the conversation, not by what you said, but by what you left unsaid. And now the final weapon, calmness as a form of control. In a world of noise, silence becomes a blade. When everyone's reacting, shouting, defending, you remain still, not frozen, anchored. When someone challenges you in public, you don't rush to respond. You breathe. You blink. Maybe you smirk. That calmness. It sends shockwaves because it whispers something louder than any speech. I already know how this ends. People fear chaos, but they fear calm in chaos even more. It suggests knowledge, strategy, power. When you're unshaken, they start to question their attack. They begin to wonder what you're holding back. And in that doubt, they pull their punches, not because they respect you, but because they don't understand you. And what we don't understand, we hesitate to confront. Machiavelli knew the greatest power isn't control over others. It's control over yourself in front of them. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be visible. You just need to be unreadable. Because power that is seen can be challenged, but power that is sensed is feared. When you walk into a room, you don't dominate with volume. You dominate with precision. Every word intentional, every pause tactical, every silence calculated, and while others perform for approval, you perform for outcome. Not to be liked, not to be understood, but to win. And when they finally realize they can't pin you down, when their strategies fall flat and their assumptions collapse, you don't celebrate. You disappear, quietly, like a shadow fading before dawn. Because you weren't here to be admired. You were here to endure, to outlast, to remain unknowable. This is the final commandment of Machiavelli's power perseverance law. They can't kill what they can't comprehend, and they'll never conquer what they can't read.